Hi guys, BellaDonna Black here, and this story is from the subreddit No Sleep. So turn off the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin. So before I try to begin describing what happened, to which my head is still reeling about, I should mention that numerous times I have wondered whether or not I should be trusted to drive a car. I've always been a daydreamer, something that elementary school may have been cultivated. Sitting cross-legged on the carpet for too long always made me fidgety in elementary school. When the stories bored me, I stare off at colourful posters and wallpaper borders of letters and shapes. When those became too bland, I fixated on little details of each. A tear or snag on the paper, the sticky tack that was beginning to pull away from the wall, a shadow being cast by something on the bookcase that looked like a castle. I guess what I'm saying is that when I daydream, my days rarely stops. Something really has to engage me in order to pull me away. I know this sounds all very ordinary as an unenthusiastic school kid, but I've always felt there was something a little more to it than your normal daydreamer. I could go on for hours, staring at the same thumbtack at the wall, and discover something new with every blink. Back to the driving thing though. I know I haven't always been the best. In fact, I failed my first test for stopping at a green light. I noticed I do a lot of silly things like this. Sometimes it's stopping at a green, and sometimes it's a little more dangerous, like stopping at a light and thinking it was a stop, waiting 3 seconds and almost going out into cross traffic before my better judgment slams on the brakes. I know the sort of harm I can do on the road. I know that as a driver, it's my responsibility to be safe for myself and others, and I triple check to make sure every free right and U-turn is safe and legal. I try my best to focus solely on the road, but things just sort of happen. I've wondered if I might have ADHD. These things only really became a problem within the last few years. I don't know a lot about ADHD, but I'm pretty sure it isn't something that happens over time, or appears in my late teens. The most distressing thing I've ever done on the road though is go autopilot. I'll be driving like normal and suddenly I'm almost to my destination with no actual recollection of the events that took me there. I continue forward, hands gripping the wheel in fear that I must have driven through 100 red lights or done a dozen bad things because I wasn't paying attention. I check the rear view mirror to verify that people are following me. I couldn't have breezed past an intersection, and if people are in front of me, everything must be okay. My instinct says I was paying attention all along, but routine just edits those things out of short-term memory, but I have to wonder if I can be trusted. So, it was Thursday, and I was almost out of work. I'm a part-time assistant at the high school I graduated from while going to college. My friend Evan usually shows up Tuesday and Thursday, around 2, to hitch a ride. He rides his bike there from his work. He has a license, but not a car, and we have a similar schedule, so we usually just shove his bike in my back seat and go to class together. It's not too far away either, about 8 miles maximum. He walked into the office without his bike though, eager because his dad had let him have the car today, and he wanted to drive us. He insisted that we take his. He was just learning to drive a manual, and he wanted to practice some more. He's pretty good, but hasn't got it all down quite yet. We used to do this all the time, back when he did have a car. He would drive to me, then he would drive us to college, and back to my work, and I'd go home. But as much as I wanted to indulge in his request, as well as spare myself some gas, I couldn't leave my car at work anymore. We were going to be out of class late, and the high school isn't the best part of town. We'd had a car stolen right next to the school. Some guy rode in, jumped the fence, hot-wired the car, and plowed out of the gate. We got it on camera because we have a lot of cameras on campus, but it was dark, so it wasn't too useful. Then, another time, someone broke into the shed where we stored the donated bikes for our bike repair class and stole one. He probably stole the only working bike too. And those bikes get given to charity after the students fix them. In short, I didn't want to take a chance. and made my stance firm that I was going to drive myself, and he could do as he liked, whether that he drive himself as well or hitch a ride with me. He didn't like my decision, but I wasn't going to budge. I was already buckled in by the time I remember, like the scatterbrain I am, that I had left my wrist brace in the office. I don't have a sprained wrist, just a sort of random pang that just came out of nowhere. I must have slapped my arm down on the bed frame in my sleep or something, because I don't remember doing anything to it to make it hurt so badly, but it does whenever I lift things or do something at an angle. I had taken it off because I was writing addresses for some packages and forgot to put it back, and I needed it to drive, so I unbuckled and started to walk back to the office to grab it. Evan pulled out of the driveway and headed out. When he used to take me back to high school so I could get my car, we'd play a dumb game where he left the school and I left the school at the same time and tried to drive side by side until we had part ways, going the same speed and everything. We had FM transmitters that hooked up to the cigarette lighter so that you could stream your phone's music to your radio without an auxiliary cord or anything. And if we were close enough together, we picked up each other's sound and blasted music to each other through open windows in sync. It was almost saddening to me that he was leaving without me now, since we always leave together. I ran in and grabbed the brace and bumped into the principal. I made an awkward apology, saluting him that I was off to school, and headed back out. I slipped into the brace and went on my way, out of the driveway and onto the main road. It was unusually packed, not too bad, but noticeable. I'd expect the sort of traffic closer to 3, when the schools around here get out, but to get it at 2 was unusual. I don't think much more of it, and continue on my way. I passed the fire station 2 blocks away, and soon I'm in the leftmost lane, 3 turns away from the freeway on-ramp. I glanced at my rearview mirror and watched the fire truck headed my way, lights on and siren blaring. I thought someone must have crashed or something up ahead, and that's why there was traffic. I sort of panicked. I know you're supposed to move right and stop, but I was in the left turn lane, at a light, with cars packed to my right. I couldn't remember the protocol for this situation, but with relief, watched the truck turn left at the intersection behind me. I could carry on without fearing as I was obstructing an emergency vehicle. I made my left and then another. I got on the ramp, headed east, and all I could see was a parking lot of cars. I stopped at the signal light at the bottom of the ramp, looked back, and saw that the same fire truck was barreling towards me. He must have made a turn early to avoid the traffic, and there I was, freaking out again. I was well ahead of him and wondered if I should just go and merge, but instead pulled out and over to the shoulder to clear him a path. I felt good about my decision and proud of myself for handling it calmly and correctly. He passed and I got on, moving slowly but not unbearably slow. Halfway to the next exit, there it was, way in the left lane, a car hit another. There was already another truck, and coming from the other direction, 2 more, probably for that spot. I'd never seen so many trucks for an accident. It must have been a bad one. As expected, the second I passed the scene, the traffic sped up to normal, and as I moved on, I was thinking about what I was going to ask Evan when I met him. Probably ask him what he saw, and tell him all about the fire truck that ended up behind me twice. Despite his traffic manoeuvres, I started to get this sick feeling though. I knew he left the high school well before me, and he was probably almost there by now, but it bothered me that I couldn't see him. He wasn't in my car, and his car wasn't in sight. I tried to check it, but I just couldn't. I don't know what I was so worried about. He's a big boy, after all, and can drive himself without me holding his hand, but I just felt really bad. There was a slow semi-truck up ahead, and to my left. I hung back, still going the flow of the traffic, not wanting to be in this blind spot, but some people are just too impatient. I judged disapprovingly at a car that merged out of my lane, sped up, merged back into mine and ahead of me, and passed the truck on its right. Even I knew better than to pass a semi on its right. I hung back a bit more for them, and then another car followed the first, merging into mine and passing on its right. And then another after another. I kept thinking how crazy that was. Another semi-truck came up behind, and even he passed the truck on the right side. And even more bizarre, there was a lot of big vehicles within the same length of freeway. All of them small-sized semis, completely white, with no distinguishable markings. A fourth came up on my right, from an on-ramp with hazards on. I thought he must be stupid to go on the freeway with hazard lights on. Or more likely, he kept them on to discourage cars from passing him. I kept well behind him, just in case, the whole time wondering what was going on with people today. I was squinting at my own thoughts, like I was talking to someone, and making snarky remarks when all of a sudden, I was almost to my exit. I blinked and the road was all clear. Not one car in front of me. It was impossible. The semi-trucks were all gone, out of nowhere, and I couldn't understand how I could not have taken note of a hazard I was watching so closely, leaving the road. I got on autopilot and completely spaced. I carefully checked my blind spot, emerged off the ramp, and there was no one behind me either. I felt so sick that the apocalypse could have just happened without me even noticing. But the normal, smooth traffic of the road at the bottom of the off-ramp soothed my worries. Civilization still exists. I got to campus and parked my car. I walked to the cafeteria and scooped out for Evan. No doubt he was there somewhere. After all, he left first. I sat down and waited, scrolling through Reddit and twiddling my thumbs. I waited a minute, then 5, and then 20. Evan was nowhere. I sent him a joking text message, something in lines of it being so rusty behind the wheel that he had got lost. I got a buzz in my Pebble, because I'm asleep to convenience, when he texted back, confused. I said, "Where are you? I'm at the SU building." He replied back, "I'm not going to school today, remember?" I squinted at my watch. He never told me he wasn't going to school, and if he wasn't, why did he want to drive me? I rolled my eyes and didn't reply. I had the class to get to. I walked to class, mumbling, as I tried to recite the speech I was supposed to present today in class. I stood by the door, expecting to see my classmates, who are usually there, but the benches outside were empty. I was better luck that now. Not only could I pass the time by talking to Evan, but I couldn't talk to my classmates either. I peeked through the window, wondering if they were inside already. It would be weird if they were, since there's a German class in there directly before, and class hasn't started that soon. But the room was, you guessed it, empty. This time though, for good reason. There was a class cancellation notice on the door. For a moment my heart leapt. Maybe I didn't have to present today, but it was unfortunately not a notice for me. My eyes fell disappointedly on ASL 101 Smith, Monday to Wednesday, 3:30 to 5, cancelled, and then froze as I read the notice again. Monday to Wednesday? I repeated to myself. Why would they keep the notice up a day after? My Pebble buzzed again. I didn't reply back to Evan, but I guess he felt the need to clarify. It's Wednesday, remember? I have to meet with the recruiter. I pulled out my phone to make sure I'd read it correctly. No doubt. He said it was Wednesday. I objected and corrected him, telling him it was Thursday, but he insisted it wasn't. I felt my face heat up, wondering, is everyone going crazy today? It's Thursday, Evan. Thursday the... I paused to look at the numerical date, but never made another stroke on the keypad. There, highlighted with a red box on the calendar app, said, Wednesday, the 30th. I was dumbstruck and took a second to consider it, but didn't humour it for longer than one. It was possible. I have a new literature and film class that meets on Wednesday, and ends at 9, and I knew I went to it yesterday. The teacher struggled to get the movie playing on some strange media player that then baffled us, and we watched The Postman in preparation for a lecture on Pablo Neruda. We all collaborated, trying to figure out ways to troubleshoot the problem. When we finally got it going, the subtitles wouldn't show, which wouldn't be a big deal if the movie wasn't in Italian. I remembered it all vividly, and remembered the plot of the story and all the characters. There's no way I imagined all of that. I approached another student in the hall and asked them what day it was. They checked their phone and confirmed it was the 30th. I paced back and forth in front of my class, deciding to sit out in front and wait for my teacher and classmates, who would surely come, but they never did. I left the building and wandered the campus, asking random people for the day, and they all said the same. I slumped, defeated, against the door to my Wednesday class and waited patiently for a familiar face. Hours went by, and a class came in, lectured and left. As the time for my class drew closer, new students filed in. I wished I knew people in that class better and couldn't decide if they were in mine. Instead, I fixed my eyes on the hall, waiting for the teacher to emerge, and like clockwork, as he always did, strolled down the hall at about 5 minutes to. I stood and followed him in and sat at my usual spot. For a second, I had a more embarrassing fear that I was about to attend a different class by him, but he called out my name on the roll call. The teacher began with a brief introduction on the film before trying to get it to go. Every word, though I couldn't recite the lines if he asked me, was almost mistakenly identical to the memory of what I know already happened. He tried to get the movie to play, and it didn't. A classmate suggested something to try, and as I knew, it wouldn't work. It didn't fix the problem. I closed my eyes and tried to remember. Next, someone's going to offer he used a different media player. Try to open it in Windows Media Player, someone suggested from the back. I was sweating like crazy. There was no way this was happening. I was living my Wednesday all over again, but only the last half. Before the next comment could be suggested, I stood up and walked to the computer, pointing out the right buttons to press and everything I knew would work. He grinned as the movie began with subtitles and all. Joking that I was a computer whiz, I nervously laughed and sat back down, accepting my current fate to rewatch the film. Everything was how I remembered. I drove home in silence and went to bed immediately, praying I would wake up to a Friday. My hand fell immediately on my phone in the morning. It was Thursday the 1st. I tried to go about my day as calmly as possible. I knew every parent who would call their kid in sick before they called, and without fail, each one did. I knew every student who was going to be picked up today and what class they were in, for I was asked to look up their schedule in the system. We received the fax for a cumulative file request. I took off my hand brace and wrote the address, promptly put it back on right after. I stared down the seconds for Evan to waltz into the office. He came in with a grinning, eager face and no bike. He exclaimed that he had had his dad's car today and he wanted to drive us, and with exhaustion I sauntered into the parking lot and met him at the car. "Come on, let's just take mine," he insisted. "I can't leave mine here anymore. I don't trust the neighbourhood when it's late," I repeated. I started to feel that same sickness in my stomach, the sickness I felt when he left the parking lot without me. This wasn't some newfound psychic ability or déjà vu. I was really repeating the day over again. I was going to get in my car and he in his, and then he would drive to the recruiter and I would rewatch The Postman. He opened his door and threw his backpack in and sat. Something in me was screaming not to let him close his door. "Wait," I shouted. "You don't have a parking pass, remember?" "Oh," he realised. "Then I'll just park at the train station across the street." "Why the hassle?" "Well, we could also just take your pass and both ride with me." "I don't want to," was the only excuse I could think of. Truthfully, it wasn't fair that I wouldn't suggest he left his car at the sketchy parking lot instead of leaving mine. But that was the selfish decision I was going to stand by. He gave up and grabbed his backpack. I locked my doors and let him pick the music. We pulled out onto the road, joining the averagely spaced traffic of a normal Thursday at 2. I passed the station, keeping an eye out in my mirror for the fire truck, but it never appeared. I entered onto the freeway with ease, because it was barely empty. He teased me about driving like a turtle in the slowpoke lane. There was no crash in the left lane and no ambulance or trucks. There was no sketchy semi-trucks or reckless drivers. We got to the college and stopped by the SU building, like normal, We walked to my Thursday class and joined my classmates waiting outside. He wished me luck on my presentation and left. I took him to his car after class, where he made me promise that he could drive us tomorrow, and I drove home. And that's where I am now. A rational side of me wants to say it was all in timing, but I must have got on the freeway before the crash happened, which is why there was no trucks and no traffic. But I can't help but feel like there was something more. What if the crash on that Thursday would never have happened at all? Evan liked to drive fast, but he didn't have a handle on driving stick yet. What if he had driven himself and fumbled with a gear shift? What if he wasn't paying attention and ran into somebody in the fast lane? With the station so close, it would be seconds before trucks had started heading out. It would only take a second for traffic to build. In the gap between yesterday's, the day before, departures provided me more than enough time for everything to happen. The thought of his crash filled me with a familiar sickness. What if, in an episode of autopilot imagination, I dreamed the scenario all up in the middle of my Wednesday commute? What if it all really happened, and some force sympathetically pulled me back a day so I could have a chance to save him? Now, all I can think of are those indistinguishable semi-trucks. How horrible would it have been if they changed lanes while a small car was passing? What could have happened if that one with the hazards on had its engine overheat and swerved and hit its brakes right in front of me? My dad commented that he needed to have a look at my pads. Would my car have been able to handle a sudden stop? Were those trucks supposed to mean something to me? Are those warnings too? What am I supposed to do with what I saw? I don't know what it all means, but I think I'm going to start making up excuses to take the back roads instead of the freeway. I want to tell him what I'm thinking, but he'll be offended at the accusation that he was a bad driver. I hope his dad takes the car again. I hope Evan rides his bike tomorrow. Hi guys, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment below and subscribe to my channel. You can also check out my Facebook page and my Twitter. Both links will be found in the description below.